Greetings everyone. Welcome all to the Process Mining webinar, a value discovery for enterprises. Well, before we begin who we are and where are we from, let us see what process mining and process mining together means. We should say process mining is a relatively new era of defining how the process works and how it can be streamlined. Moving on, about ourselves. We are Strategy Solutions, an enterprise or an organization with more than 12 years of experience in excellence. With our collaboration to ISO standards and our presence in various geographies like US, Canada, and India. Our global affiliations includes Microsoft, SAP, Oracle, along with the partners such as Automation Anywhere, Security Weaver, and so on and so forth. Who are we? With me, my colleague, Bhavin Vyas.
Hello everyone, my name is Bhavin Vyas and I am an SAP Senior Business and Intelligence Consultant with expertise on various implementation as well as upgrade and migration and support engagement across various industry verticals such as manufacturing, oil and gas, FMCG and pharmaceuticals. Along with that, I am active member and contributor to the SAP BI community network as well.
Well, thank you for the introduction, Bhavin. I am Ankul Tanna with Order to Cash Consultant and expertise on various engagements such as run, grow, or transformation across the industry verticals such as manufacturing, oil and gas, and FMCG. And today we'll walk you through what is process mining. The very first thing we are going to talk about the agenda, how process friction impacts the business transaction. How do we overcome the same with process mining? While we'll get the insights from the actions and will support the same with relative use cases. The very first thing that we are going to look upon is what are the challenges faced by various industries or fortune industries, to be honest. As we know that on an average, an organization has more than 500 different enterprise applications installed with different integration in themselves. For those installation and for those applications, the organizations spend a whopping 430 billion plus amounts for those enterprise solutions. But does the story end there? I would say no, because of such applications or inefficiency, the organization do lose out on more than $250 billion. And we have also observed that somewhere around 2 out of 3 CEOs still believe that digitalization or digital strategy is their topmost priority. That's why I would like to quote Gartner over here that digitization is rapidly changing how organizations create value and how they compete with each other. Do you think that process evaluation or do the outcomes have got any improvement on the outcomes? We could see from here on the survey that on-time delivery is the major KPI for all the industries, be it manufacturing, be it CPG, FMCG, retail, or any other industries. The anticipated outcome or KPI is expected to be above 90%, but the real data shows that it is as low as 43%. Because of different challenges like problems in production, out of stock materials, delayed in deliveries, or even error in pickups. At the same time, we would anticipate that our rework rate is as low as expected. A benchmark states that it should be lower than 10%, but the real data also shows that it is as high as 37%. Again, due to various reasons such as manual error, malfunctioning of machines, and defective or damaged product during transit. Owing to this, another major KPI of sales forecast is again getting hit. We want our sales forecast to be higher than 90%, but real data is less than 78%. Again, over here, incorrect factual assessment, delay in figuring out or addressing the execution capacity are foremost challenges. With this, we want our touchless invoice policy or processing rate. so that our anticipated invoice rate or in touchless invoices is more than 3/4, but actual data is as low as 26%. And the various challenges are as mentioned, like 4 to 8 days of average duration for processing an invoice, 41% invoices with exceptions, and 39% of them are having delayed invoice approvals. Where the problem lies? If we drill it down about the problem, we know that since last 5 or 6 decades, we have transformed ourselves from mainframe to PC to ERP and at the end to cloud apps on a recent basis. Still, our businesses expect that crucial processes should or must utilize a rigid framework and fragmented technology tasks. This results in gap between organizations' expectation and reality, and this bridge is becoming broader and broader for the digitalization. Moving on, let us describe how the process mining can fulfill the expectations.
So thanks, Ankul, for shedding lights on some of the crucial industry facts. And you mentioned that there are certain challenges around around the key companies' KPIs, right? So let's see how process mining can help us and fulfill the expectation and how it can help us to achieve the process excellence. So let's first define what is process mining. Then we will gradually see how it can be implemented, and then we will see the real-time use case of it. So what is process mining? Process mining is a relatively a new area of a study which was grounded in a long tradition of a business. Those who are striving to optimize those business outcomes by improving on their efficiency, effectiveness, and productivity of their critical workflows around their process environment, right? So what really means process? Process is something which is having a series of actions or a task which runs on a progression manner, which is having a defined start and a defined end, correct? And what is mining? Mining means we are trying to get the insights out of the data which is in our underlying system. So then, so the term process mining originates from the field of data mining. And the concept, you are mining the data to get the insights or the answers to solve the problems. So, but data mining is in the data mining, the search is usually specific to the identified challenge or the obstacle, while the process mining applies spatial algorithm in form of event log data to in order to identify the trends, patterns, details on how entire processes are running, rather than focusing on the singular incident. And on top of it, using the key process performance indicators, process mining technologies can show exactly where there are opportunities to correct or improve the processes. And by performing the root cause analysis on operational data, it can also indicate that where the things are deviated from the standard process. And the beauty is it can be connected, this KPPIs can be connected with the company's key performance indicator for the comprehensive measurement or in-depth analysis and for the sustainable monitoring all in a single environment. So let's see how the new or the modern approach can be beneficial in our digital transformation journey. So, as you know, process improvement may not be the new idea, but the scale and the complexity at which the modern processes or the environment is quickly changing, there is a need of a modern way, which is having the more capability, and it can provide the real-time insights and control the continuous process excellence demand. And crucially, if you see businesses evolving over the time, they expand, they scale up, they procure new system, they go through the migrations, they are acquiring new system, they are entering into the new region. So all these changes impacts the process environment, and it's a bit difficult to optimize the core process for a specific business outcome, right, without the holistic understanding of whole process environment. So you can say traditional way is more like a map. It can give you the details where exactly you are right now. While the modern way is like a GPS. It can tell you where you can go with the current set of processes. So traditional way, in a way, it can be a subjective or a partial thing, The reason being, we are manually jotting down all the processes, and whenever if any changes, then we need to accommodate those changes. While with the modern way, using the technologies like process mining, AI, ML, RPA, it can fulfill the objective, and we are getting the value out of it, and it would be a complete picture to whole process environment. In traditional way, we are manually noting down what all the processes we need to move to the new environment, or it may be in form of static report. It can be a lengthy and costly because we need to involve the SMEs, and business department has run through several meetings, and then they need to identify what all the processes and how they are interconnected with each other. While the modern way is immediate because since we are directly connecting our source system with the process mining tools, so it's immediate, it gives the insights immediate, whatever it works on a factual information rather than manually noting down the information. And it's a self-service tool, isn't it? I mean, it provides the specialized connector to connect the different processes from the source system. So it's a self-service tool. Users can build their own process mining dashboards out of it. In traditional way, it can be a one-time understanding. The reason being, once you craft your process mining landscape, and in future, if there is any addition of those processes, you need to jot it down those processes again and complete that details. While in the modern way, it's a continuous enhancement of the existing process environment. If any new process is added, then you just need to plug in that connector with the existing process mining environment to it. So this is the difference between traditional and modern approach. So let's see how process mining life cycle looks like. So there are four different stages of the process mining. So first stage is collection of the event log data. So basically, whenever any transaction happens in the transactional data, at that time it leaves a digital footprint in the transactional system. So those footprints we can recover in the collection stage, and we can pass this information to the discovery stage. So discovery stage, it try to bring all the processes at a single platform, and it applies the special algorithm, and it can give us the information like how is the performance of that process, how is the conformance level of that process, and how we can improve on those process standards. Once we define those, we need to analyze those process area for the optimization, and by improving on our or increasing the process automation, we can reduce the manual intervention in this stage. So here we benchmark the processes, and it's a continuous monitoring process. So whenever any changes happen in future, then there is a continuous improvement opportunity. So what are the key capabilities or key benefits we are getting once we are implementing the process mining tools? So first is improve in the process efficiency. The reason being, we are classifying or we are applying the standard process flows, and we are removing the deviations out of any processes. Processes are having a multiple stages, and they are interconnected with each other. So if one stage is having a problem, and if we are removing the deviation, ultimately it brings another process bit earlier. So in a way, we are improving the efficiency since they are interconnected processes. Definitely, we are adhering to the client. The reason being, we are whenever we found any non-compliant processes, we try to remove those processes by identifying. Like example, maverick buying, right? I think you are going to cover in procure to pay cycle that maverick buying, someone just if without the notice of procurement department, they just try to buy the goods without the notice, then it's out of the compliance. So they need to follow that compliance. I'm sure you will be going to handle that in a later stage, right? Definitely, there is another key capability is like increase in the profitability. Since we are optimizing the core of every processes, we will get the increased profitability. We are reducing on our costs. As you mentioned that with the manual invoice processing, for each manual processing, there is $11 cost included, right? So if we automate that processes, those costs can be reduced, and we will have the increased profitability. We will improve on our transparency because from the single graphical representation, we can get the holistic view of how my processes are running and how the transactions are really happening in a single view. So, Ankul, over to you. Can you please walk us through with the real-time use case of process mining?
Sure, would be happy to. When after this power pack performance of understanding what process mining is, let us move on to the real life scenario. In real life, as we know that there are multiple applications interconnected in terms of integration, and we'll cover a couple of scenarios like procure to pay and order to cash. Once the purchase order is created from a third party system and passed on to any ERP, let us say SAP, there could be the point where deviation could creep in. Like price change is one of the parameter where if it is deviated, then you'll have to do some arduous tasks to make sure that you are back to the streamlined process. Another example is if you have a third party application for like a workday or success factor or something, and unassigned workflow is passed on to your ERP environment. At the same time, you'll have to dig into that and you'll have to understand which workflow is supposed to be assigned to which associate or consultant. The same could happen in a manual verification if you are using the spreadsheets or any other tool where a manual verification is going to take a longer duration rather than a streamlined process. Similarly, delay in email notification from any browser to your mail services could also lead to delays. On the same way, lead to cache, the lead data master data mismatch can also be one of the key reason where while your process is derailed. Let us again drill it down to procure to pay and see one real life process scenario. This is one of the scenario where we start with the batch size of 2000 purchase order, and we see that there are non-compliance of somewhere around 600 purchase order. We'll start from the initial process, and as the graph suggests, it should ideally go with creation of purchase requisition, then purchase order, then printing and scanning of purchase order, goods receipt, scanning of invoice, booking of invoice, and at that end, the process will conclude. At the very beginning, we would anticipate that this 2000 batch size should be concluded within 12 to 15 working days. But with the deviation, as we just thought about maverick buying, someone would directly call the vendor and suggest to send the goods. But when we are scanning the invoice, when the goods is available at our warehouse or location, we come to realization that there is no supporting document to that, like a purchase order or any other further documents. We'll have to again delay ourselves by 5 to 6 working days, which is going to eat up our time. A second case could be rather than creating a purchase requisition, there could be somewhere around 200 purchase order, 10% of the data, where directly purchase order line item is created and been sent to vendor. Although there is a deviation of there is no intermediate step missed over here, but this deviation could ultimately suggest that there is a non-standard process performed which has been accepted as a benchmark in the environment. One another example which we have highlighted over here is changing of price. Vendor might have called and confirmed that the price has been updated, but if it has not rectified in earlier any of the document, to rectify the same at this point in time is going to eat up somewhere around 2 weeks of time. Then again, missing out of scanning an invoice is a non-standard practice which has been accepted as benchmark. So thus, the process which was supposed to be concluded, entire process in 2 weeks of effort, could lead up to somewhere around 4 weeks or 5 weeks based on various industries. What are the impacts of doing such? The impact could be as high as difference in account reconciliation, incomplete MIS, issue in vendor satisfaction because we are not able to fulfill on a standard way what vendor is expecting out of us. Also, ultimately, it will also raise an issue in order fulfillment cycle because the part or the material which was supposed to arrive in 2 weeks of time has not yet arrived within 3 weeks as well. Additionally, once we get in with the process mining, we could understand all the deviation on non-standard ways and stream them in a standard process so that no purchase order has been deviated and we get the end result in stipulated time. Now, coming back to the same example, which I was trying to suggest that there are some frictions over here, but with the process mining, we could understand that this process has been streamlined and we get back to the regular workflow, which is fairly standard in its practice. But moving on, we'll see that where process mining can be utilized or where it is beneficial. It is suggested that this is not only applicable to any of the manufacturing unit or retail unit. You could utilize the same in record to report so that your errors has been reduced, the compliance has been increased, and the time to close the book has been decreased exponentially. Also, during customer services, we could also utilize a process mining to reduce the time to close any of the service request which is available to the technician. We could also increase the productivity of technicians and furthermore, again lead to order to reorder. We could reduce the sales cycle because ultimately one process could have its impact, although major or minor, and subsequent process. And by doing so, by fixing one or the other processes, we could help with the lead to order to reorder cycle as well. But now coming to the point where the process mining can be helpful in the system migration. So Bhavik, would you like to derail that?
Yeah, sure. So I think, Ankul, stakes are really high when we talk about system migrations, right? It's bit critical operation because we are here migrating something which is already live and it is adopted by the users. So according to the market research, that 60% of migrated systems fail to meet the expectation of the businesses for which the migration was intended, right? And these are two some of the critical factors why the migration maybe have the less adoption, right? So first one is the lack of pre-standardization. So any standard, any lack of pre-standardization means usually the standard process should be followed. Otherwise, it can arises. There are string of errors can be arises during the system migration, and without clearly defining the process path, if you are simply replicating the old processes, it creates a problem and which leads to the frictions into the new system. There is another important factor is incomplete fit gap analysis. When we are doing a fit gap analysis before the migration, at that time we are trying to jot it down what all the processes we need to migrate and how these processes will actually look like and try to visualize that how this process will look like and we try to map those details over there. But what if this document is partial or maybe a subjective and incomplete? Because ultimately it will have impact on our fit gap analysis itself. So as they say, even the base plans are having the exceptions, and over the time, this plans can become this deviation can becomes the critical problem while we are migrating the systems. So as you can see, this is how we plan the migration. This is like any migration projects look like. These are the project kickoff. From the project kickoff, we document our processes. We validate those design manually. Then we configure and migrate. And we are going live and we are thinking about the value realization. We are thinking about the frictionless migration. But in real sense, when we actually implement or maybe migrate our system, friction crawls in and there is no immediate value generation due to some of the factors we mentioned earlier, right? Because we are knotting down the processes manually. But with the help of process mining can help us in every stage of system migration. So if you go in a pre-migration strategy where you can derive your processes, so in your legacy system itself, you can implement the process mining, and from there only you can optimize your processes and move the processes which is already required to be migrated. So these are basic stages while we are performing system migration using the process mining. So in the explore phase, in the before the pre-migration in the existing system, it tries to explore the problem and dissimilarity and the gaps in order to mark the area or the processes which has to be streamlined. Here it will decide that what all the processes should be migrated and what all the processes we need to leave in the legacy system. So once you identify those processes, You can move those processes in the new system. And with the more set of data, you try to benchmark those processes, and with the internal and external implementation model, you try to craft the best practices, and ultimately you roll out with the optimal core model out of it. Once we move this defined processes to the new system as for HANA system, we need to continuously monitor those systems, because ultimately if any friction arises in future, then it can alert us that this friction arises again. So it ensure that we are getting the proper ROI out of it, and it removes the hurdle and address adoption. It have the more adaptability rather than focusing on the manual work. So these are some of the common connectors and enablers which are available in the process mining technology. So SAP ECC, SAP S4HANA, SAP SuccessFactors, then Microsoft Dynamics and Oracle. So these are the source system which can be connected with the process mining tools to get the insights out of the actions, what all the transactions they are performing in the source system. Apart from this, there are incident management as well as change management tools like BMC Remedy, ServiceNow can be aligned with the process mining to get more insights out of it. Some of the upcoming technology like RPA, AI, ML can be applied for the automation processes purpose. And these are some of the process mining enablers like Selenius, UiPath. Those are the industry leaders as per the recent average survey. So when should we look for the process mining? So these are the three criteria when we are looking for the process mining. If you are unable to visualize how the actual processes are running, or maybe we are having a minimal idea that how frictions are arising and what are the reasons for that deviation, or maybe we are lack of resources to eliminate those process frictions. So during the realization phase, we need to identify what are the factors we should focus for the process mining. So in a way, I would say every business is a collection of a core processes, and they are the foundational infrastructure and the base element of the business operations. So process mining technologies emphasize of this foundation layer to provide more value to the enterprises by optimizing their key processes. So with this quote, I would like to open the session for the Q&A. Thanks.